so we're going to jump into what we are supposed to be jumping into, which is Chronicles. We did our first half of the first book of Chronicles last week. We were speaking about the Davidic dynasty. We were speaking about how King David is being portrayed in a very positive light, and it's sort of, no pun intended, chronicling, his rise and how he is consolidating his power and how he is establishing the capital in Jerusalem and how he is fending off adversaries and becoming a figure of great renown, of strength, but also of religious piety, right? And so what we're going to touch upon today a bit is his, as we're going to find out, unsatisfied quest to build the temple, to build a God a house. And so that's where we're going to start today. I believe is right there. So number one on my playlist right now. So I see me in the top box, and then next is Sharon. So Sharon, if you could unmute and give it a go.
Sure. When David settled in his palace, David said to the prophet Nathan, "Here I am dwelling in a house of cedar, while the ark of the covenant of the Eternal is under tent cloths." Nathan said to David, "Do whatever you have in mind, for God is with you."
Okay, and so Nathan gives a thumbs up. Do whatever you want. Nathan, good prophet, better hot dog. But that being, but he is a good guy. Just a little tangent, like for everybody. Ari's first hot dog at like not even a year old was at the Coney Island Nathan's, and he loved them ever
The
since.
best.
The best. The little red fork with the fries. It's the best. Can I find one of these in Pinellas County? Does Nathan's exist here? I don't think so.
No.
Oh my goodness gracious! What a shanda. Anyway, so yeah, so David wants to build a house for God, and Nathan says, "Sure, sounds great. Do what you want." But of course, Nathan's going to get another message here, and it's not for more ketchup. Okay.
But that same night, the word of God came to Nathan. "Go and say to my servant David, thus said the Eternal, you are not the one to build a house for me to dwell in. From the day that I brought out Israel to this day, I have not dwelt in a house, but have gone from tent to tent and from one tabernacle to another. As I moved about, wherever Israel went, did I ever reproach any of the judges of Israel, whom I appointed to care for my people Israel? Why have you not built me a house of cedar?"
Yeah, so God's like, "Hey, what do I need a house for? I've been bumping around all over the place. Dave, you're not building me a house, but don't worry about it. I've been schlepping and been schlepped all over the place. It's okay. Let's not worry about this right now. Why haven't you built me a house of cedar? I got bigger problems." So, okay, and so after this, Randall, you want to jump in here?
Further say thus to my servant David, thus said the Eternal of hosts, I took you from the pasture, from following the flock, to be ruler of my people Israel, and I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut down all of your enemies before you. Moreover, I will give you renown like that of the greatest men on earth. I will establish a home for my people Israel, and will plant them firm, so that they shall dwell secure and shall tremble no more. Evil men shall not wear them down any more as in the past, ever since I appointed judges over my people Israel. I will subdue all your enemies and declare you the Eternal will build a house for you.
Okay, so it's sort of the opposite, right? God is telling David, look, don't worry about building a house for me. I'm building a house for you. I'm making you, the centerpiece. I'm making you a person of great fame and renown. And the people are going to sort of find this home in Israel, and no one is going to beat them up anymore, right? No one's going to smack them around. God is going to be on their side, going to fight for them, going to fight on their side, and not let any more harm come. Didn't work out so well, by the way, long term. But in this part, it's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. One more paragraph.
When your days are done and you follow your fathers, I will raise up your offering after you, one of your own sons, and I will establish his kingship. He shall build a house for me, and I will establish his throne forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. But I will never withdraw my favor from him as I withdraw it from your predecessor. I will instill him in my house and in my kingship forever, and his throne shall be established forever.
Amen, amen. How wonderful, right? Okay, and so now this is the establishment. Let's remember again, the point of this book is to establish the legitimacy, the authenticity, and supremacy of the Davidic dynasty, the Davidic monarchy, right? So it's not just about King David, awesome dude, right? David's fantastic. We love King David, but it's not just about him. It's about his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren all the way through, right? That he is the one, and he and his family have the kingship forever. So if someone else who is not of the Davidic stock wants to be king, what do we say to that? Boo! We don't like it, because that's not what it's supposed to be according to the Chronicles. It's supposed to be the Davidic rule, right? David and his progeny are supposed to be ruling over Israel. And so in this case, they're going to take one of his kids, because remember, David had a little bit of an active social life. Let's put it that way. He had a number of children. He had a good old time. In ancient Israel, right? And so they have to pick one of his kids. Isn't the eldest, I might note, but they have to pick one of his kids to become king over the Israelite people, right? And so it's this assurance that God is never going to withdraw, right, my favor, like it happened to Saul, right? Because Saul thought all was good in the hood, right? Saul thought things were great, but then it got yanked from him, right? It got taken away from him. So God says, David, that's not going to be your fate or your family's. We're going to have your dynasty be an eternal one. Make sense? Okay, we're going to move onwards and upwards. Carolyn, you want to read?
Sure. Nathan spoke to David in accordance with all these words and all this prophecy. Then King David came and sat before the Eternal, and he said, "What am I, O eternal God, and what is my family that you have brought me this far? Yet even this, O God, has seemed too little for you. For you have spoken of your servant's house for the future. You regard me as a man of distinction, O eternal God. What more can David add regarding the honoring of your servant? You know your servant."
Yeah, so now David's going to pray a little bit. David is coming before God with a little bit of humility, right? Who am I that you have bestowed all this great bounty on me? You took me out of as a little shepherd boy out of the flock, so to speak, and you've raised me up to be king, and my children will be king, after me. What an amazing thing. What else can I do for you? And that's why he wants to build a temple, right? Things have been so good for him. He wants to show God the same respect and wants to show God appreciation and love. But he's not being allowed to in the same way. Carolyn, you want to give me one more?
O eternal, for your servant's sake and of your own accord, you have brought this great thing and made known all these great things. O eternal, there is none like you, and there is no other God but you, as we have always heard. And who is like your people Israel, a unique nation on earth, whom God went and redeemed as God's people, winning renown for yourself for great and marvelous deeds, driving out nations before your people whom you redeemed from Egypt. You have established your people Israel as your very own people forever. And you, O Eternal, have become their God.
Huzzah. So give a little history here, of course, and it's a very nice prayer, right? It's a very nice sort of reflection on God's role in his life and the life of the Israelite people. Okay. Okay, Bob Mansfeld. Bob, you want to read a little bit for us? You got to unmute. You got to unmute a little bit, Bob. You're still muted. There you go.
Now, O Eternal, let your promise concerning your servant and his house be fulfilled forever. And do as you have promised. Let it be fulfilled, that your name be glorified forever. And that man will say, the eternal host of God of Israel is Israel's God. And may the house of your servant David be established before you. Because you, my God, have revealed to your servant that you will build a house for him. Your servant has ventured to pray to you.
Yeah, so again, he's saying, hey, I was going to build a house for you, but you're building a house for me. Isn't that nice? You know, houses for everybody. You know, my house will come a little later, says God, but David's house, the metaphorical house, of course, not a literal house, the metaphorical house of David is going to continue, you know, through his children and grandchildren. Bob, we can finish it off here. And now,
O Eternal, you are God, and you have made this gracious promise to your servant. Now it has pleased you to bless your servant's house, that it abide before you forever. For you, Eternal, have blessed and are blessed forever.
Okay, so very nice. He is, of course, very thankful for all this good stuff. But now, a plot twist. Okay, now we got a problem because life can never be easy. And so that was a nice prayer. Things are going smoothly, they're going swimmingly. Life is just all peaches and cream. Everyone's having a good old time until our friend Satan appears, Satan. Very sort of random in this book. We don't get this more than once. Here, Satan, not meaning, again, devil pitchfork guy, but Satan, it means adversary, right? It's some sort of adversary, some temptation, some yetzer, some inclination to do the wrong thing. And so Satan here is going to cause some problems, like he did with poor Job. Remember what Satan did to poor Job, you know, that Job was having a grand old time until Satan was going to mess with him a little bit. Then he was, you know, full of boils and brokenness in the middle of the desert. Not so much fun for Job. David's going to get off a little easier here, but we've got a problem because of this Satan, this figure coming to cause mishigas. So Melissa, you want to, and Tyler, you want to give us a little bit of mishigas?
Satan arose against Israel and incited David to number Israel. Said to and the commander of the army, go and count Israel from Beersheba to Dan. Bring me information as to their number. Joab answered, may the Eternal increase God's people 100-fold, eternal hearing. Are they not all subjects of my Eternal? Why should my Eternal require this? Why should it be a cause of guilt for Israel?
Yeah, and so we got a problem, which is this idea of numbering the Israelites. For those of you who watched temple services, either in person, outside, or at home on YouTube or Zoom, I gave a little drash on this a little while back. I'm sure it's emblazoned in your memory. But the idea that counting Jews, numbering Jews, is seen as problematic. Whenever we have a census, it's usually followed by not fun things. Usually a plague, some kind of, you know, unpleasant situation arises from the idea of numbering the Israelites. Sometimes it's okay when God calls for it, right? But if we call for it, we do it ourselves, it's the source of a lot of ajra and a lot of source. And so a seemingly innocuous line, right, about numbering Israel, that's actually very dangerous. And so David goes to his, number one, his chief military strategist, to Yoav, and says, hey, let's count these people from Beersheba to Dan, a big swath of the country. Let's count them all and give me the information. And Yoav's no dummy. Joab sort of understands, wait a minute, this might not be a good idea. And I remember my history. I sat in religious school and I learned that you can't number the people, right? I learned this somewhere, that everyone's a subject. Why do you have to count them? Who cares? And so so it's a problem here. I just realized that this is the problem when you use replace all, because here it's actually supposed to be my Lord King, not my eternal King. That all subjects of David, of the Lord. Why should my Lord, the King, require this? It's going to be a problem. So if you were in a little tangent, if you were in an Orthodox synagogue, right, and you needed a minyan in order to start services, a minyan in the Orthodox tradition being 10 men above the age of 13, and you look around, maybe you're the Rebbe, the rabbi there, you look around and you're not sure. Maybe you didn't have a good breakfast, but you can't on site, see how many people are there. So you're not supposed to go 1, 2, 3. That's bad luck. That brings the evil eye. You can't do that. According to tradition, or else you get the divine zets. And so instead of saying 1, 2, 3, you have people count themselves. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. That way, you escape the bad juju of counting. In public. There's another little trick. On Saturday mornings, right, for Shabbat services, a traditional psalm, that is sung, Ma tovu ohlecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, how good and fair are your tents, your dwelling places, Jacob, Israel, etc., etc. So they use that to count. And how do they do that? If you have enough people to say one word of the first verse, you're fine. Va'ani berov chazdecha avo vetecha eshtachave el heichal kodshecha be'irotecha. 10. And so if you have enough to do that first verse with everyone saying a word, you got 10. You can start the service. Or you can just start the service. But that being said, if you're worried about the numbers, so to speak, there are ways of counting without counting. And this all goes back to this superstition that it is bad, it is wrong to count Jews. And if you do that, you're going to have a problem. So that's sort of the background for this story here, is that it's not a good idea to count the Jewish people, to count the Israelites, especially for seemingly no earthly good reason to do it, which is why Yoav is a little stressed about it. So, Bram, do you want to pick up a little bit here?
However, the king's command to Joab remained firm. So Joab set out and traversed all Israel. He then came to Jerusalem. Joab reported to David the number of people that had been recorded. All Israel comprised 1,100,000 ready to draw the sword, while in Judah there were 470,000 men ready to draw the sword. He did not record among them Levi and Benjamin, because the king's command had become repugnant to Joab.
Yeah, so he's a little worried. He's not enjoying this job at all. He's a little stressed out. So the king says, so he makes his case, this is not a good idea. And David says, noted, do it anyway. I'm the boss. I'm the king. Get out there. Do what you're supposed to be doing. So Joab goes out and he's doing it maybe a little half-heartedly. He's counting all these people, trying to get this thing done. And then when it gets to like the Levites and the Benjamites, like, you know what? I'm not doing this at all. Forget this. I'm done with this already. This is not going to end well. It's like, when your boss tells you something, you're like, that's a pretty stupid idea. But they're the boss. You got to do it anyway. But you're just sort of worried that it's not going to end well. And so Joab said, "Yeah, I'm done with this. This is not a great idea. If I get in a little trouble, that's fine. But this is just not a wise move." Okay, and of course, God was displeased. Is the very next thing that happens here, right? So God is not amused. Linda White, you want to pick up?
Yeah. God was displeased about this matter, and God struck Israel. David said to God, I have sinned grievously in having done this thing. Please remit the guilt of your servant, for I have acted foolishly. The Eternal ordered Gad, David's seer, go and tell David. This said the Eternal, I offer you 3 things. Choose one of them, and I will bring it upon you.
It's one of the creepier sections of the Bible, I might add. Like, it's just really interesting, where God's not happy. God's ready to start laying down the discipline here. And David's like, oh, I'm sorry, this is not great. And so we're past Nathan right now. We're up to another prophet, another seer, Gad. And says, hey, tell David he's got 3 choices, all of which are unpleasant. But he's got 3 choices, and he can pick one. It's like the wheel of punishment. Like pick the one that you want. Which again is a little bit much, but nonetheless, here we are. So Gad comes to David. Linda, you want to pick up there?
Gad came to David and told him, thus said the Eternal, select for yourself a 3-year famine, or that you be swept away 3 months before your adversaries, with the sword of your enemies overtaking you, or 3 days of the sword of the Eternal, pestilence in the land, the angel of the Eternal, wrecking destruction throughout the territory of Israel. Now consider what reply I shall take back to God who sent me.
A little much, right? I mean, here we have God basically saying, look, choose your own adventure. You ever read those books when you were, when you're a kid, or read to your kids and grandkids, the choose your own adventure book? You get to a choice, and then it says, turn to page 37 for this answer, or turn to page 39 if you chose no, whatever it is. Now this is choose your own punishment, sort of, so, so David's, has this option. Either we can have a 3-year famine. We like 3s here. So a 3-year famine, or you have 3 months where basically you're going to be run out of town, right? And you're not going to be, you'll still be king, but you'll be, in flight for 3 months. Or 3 days of the angel of death basically coming down and wreaking a destruction, causing death and pestilence and all that other good stuff. So pick one, David. What do you want to happen to you here? And Linda, give me one more. David said to Gad.
David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Let me fall into the hands of the Eternal, for God's compassion is very great. And let me not fall into the hands of men. The Eternal sent a pestilence upon Israel, and 70,000 men fell in Israel.
Yes, it doesn't end well. David sort of like hedges a little bit, I think, here. David doesn't want to fall into the hands of men because who knows what they're going to do to him. And so it's basically, God, you choose. I'm not choosing what I'm dealing with here. You're the one making the decision. And so here we get plague, basically. 70,000 men. So you count the Jews, now you can count 70,000 less, I think is what God is saying here. So you got to take the number off the top. It's not great. and it's sort of scary and a pretty harsh punishment for the sin of a census. But it goes back to that idea that only God gets to count the Jews, because we are God's possession, not the possession of a people, of a person, right? So God gets to count, but we don't get to count everybody on our own. Okay, yeah, and so then once this happens, it's going to be a little bit more. Okay, so the 70,000 people, they're gone, but there's a little bit more coming, right? God's not quite done with this yet. Hey, Debbie Siegel joined us. Hey, Debbie. Can you unmute?
I'm muting. Sorry,
There you go.
sorry I'm late.
Nice to see you again today. So, you feel like reading a little bit for us?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so God sent an angel.
Just tell me what chapter you're on.
We're on chapter, I don't remember. What was this? 20. I'll tell you when we get to the next chapter.
Okay. God sent an angel to Jerusalem to destroy it, but as he was about to wreak the destruction, the Eternal saw and renounced further punishment and said to the destroying angel, "Enough, stay your hand." The angel of the Eternal was then standing by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite.
Good old Ornan the Jebusite. He appears in Samuel as well in another telling of this story. This is actually chapter 21, Debbie, 21.
Thank you.
So it's a weird story, but it's going to be important, so we're going to stick with it. So we have here, God sends the angel to come and do its thing, but God said, you know what? Let's chill a little bit on this. Okay, maybe a little bit is enough. Maybe take a little coffee break. I don't think angels drink coffee, but just chill for a little bit. Stretch the legs, but that's about it, right? And so they stopped right at this threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Okay, and this is going to be a very important passage here for us here. So the angels just again there at the threshing floor. Debbie, let me scroll down a little bit and keep going. David looked up.
David looked up and saw the angel of the Eternal standing between heaven and earth, with a drawn sword in his hand, directed against Jerusalem. David and the elders, covered in sackcloth, threw themselves on their faces. David said to God, "Was it not I alone who ordered the numbering of the people? I alone am guilty and have caused severe harm. But these sheep, what have they done? O eternal my God, let your hand fall upon me and my father's house, and let not your people be plagued."
Okay, so David steps up here, right, a little bit. And David says, look, can we just knock this off? It was my fault, right? Leadership, right? It's his bad. He's the one who did the wrong thing. Let's stop taking that out on all the other Israelites. If God wants to punish somebody, David says, punish me. Punish my house. But stop killing these Israelites. It's not the right thing to do. Okay, let's do one more here, Debbie, the angel.
The angel of the Eternal told Gad to inform David that David should go and set up an altar to the Eternal on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. David went up, following Gad's instructions, which he had delivered in the name of the Eternal. Ornan too saw the angel. His 4 sons who were with him hid themselves while Ornan kept on threshing wheat.
I love that last sentence because it makes absolutely no real sense to me, but I love that last sentence anyway, where it's like you have Ornan sees the angel, and it's like a Tuesday for this dude. Oh, just an angel, it's fine. I'm going to keep threshing my wheat. When the other sons are getting out of Dodge, and they're sort of like going, oh, I'm not going to deal with this. And he's like, hey, angel, how you doing? Nice sword you got there. You want to get out of the way? I got work to do. It's a busy day. So David makes this little, he gets up, he goes to talk to this dude now because he gets this word from Gad, who talks to God, who talks to David. Eventually it's a little game of divine telephone, and David gets the message that he's got to go and build an altar on this threshing floor. Ornan kept threshing that wheat. Got to get to the market. Okay, Sharon, you want to pick up here?
David came to Ornan. When Ornan looked up, he saw David and came off the threshing floor and bowed low to David with his face to the ground. David said to Ornan, "Sell me the site of the threshing floor that I may build on it an altar to the Eternal. Sell it to me at the full price, that the plague against the people will be checked."
Yes, it's time for a little real estate, right? A little real estate bargaining, okay? And so he sees Ornan and says, "Hey, nice threshing floor, nice wheat. It's great. But can you sell me this place? Because I got to build an altar here. So, I got $50, whatever it is. Can I buy this off you?" And what does Ornan say? You keep going. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Okay.
Ornan said to David, "Take it and let my lord the king do whatever he sees fit. See, I donate oxen for burnt offerings and the threshing boards for wood, as well as wheat for a meal offering. I donate all of it." But King David replied to Ornan, "No, I will buy them at the full price. I cannot make a present to the Eternal of what belongs to you, or sacrifice a burnt offering that has cost me nothing." So David paid Ornan for the site 600 shekels worth of gold.
So a lot of cash is being used, and not nothing. 600 shekels, it's a little bit of cash. Of course, he's a king, so he could probably afford it. But that being said, it's a little bit of a cost. And so, Ornan was like, "You know what? Just take it. You're the king. You're you. And as we know from Mel Brooks, it's good to be the king, right? We understand that. Take what you want. Take it. It's fine. My gift to you. The oxen too, the boards, the wheat, whatever you want. Go make sacrifices. Sei gesund. It's fine." But David says, "No, that's not how it works. Because how am I going to give to God something that isn't mine? So how can I do that? It doesn't make any sense. So I have to buy it from you, because a sacrifice, very technically speaking, has to actually be a sacrifice. It has to cost you something. It has to actually be meaningful. That's something that has value to you. It's like the Cain and Abel story. We remember from the Midrashim, the Cain and Abel story, that Cain, his offering gets rejected by God, while Abel's is accepted. And the commentators ask why. Because Abel, it says, offers something of value. Abel offers the first of his flock, the finest, choicest, lamb chops that he had. He offered those to God. And for Cain, according to, again, the tradition, offers some moldy tomatoes, some, rotten carrots, whatever it might be, some gross cabbage, whatever. It costs him nothing. So God rejects that. It's not that God is only a meat eater. It's the idea that Cain offers not the best of his crops, but the worst of his crops, according to tradition. So when you sacrifice something, it has to have some kind of value. You have to sort of feel it a little bit. It's like when there's a food drive, right? When Temple B'nai Israel, has our food drive, and then people come to donate some canned goods, and we look through them later, and we find a can of lima beans that expired in 2017. That's not a sacrifice. That's not a donation. It's not usable. It's garbage. You basically gave the synagogue garbage at that point when one does that. So that's not how you're supposed to donate, to a food drive. You're supposed to find something to make sure that it's still good, that it's something that people can use, that they can eat. You can either buy something new, or as long as it's something that has some value, then it's a donation. If not, dreck, doesn't work, right? And so David says, "Look, I need to be the one who pays for this. It has to come out of my pocket, so to speak, or else it's not a donation. It's not a sacrifice." And so he gets the money, he gets the cash, again, weighs up those 600 shekels worth of gold and buys it fair and square. Do we remember, deep cut, everybody, deep cut, do we remember a story from the book of Genesis that has a similar ring to it than this little transaction? Not an easy question.
Joseph.
Joseph, a little earlier than Joseph. A little earlier. A couple generations back. Abraham. So Abraham, his wife Sarah dies, and he wants to bury her in a cave, the cave of Machpelah. The problem is he doesn't own the cave of Machpelah. And the Hittites who own the cave of Machpelah, they tell him, look, you're a great guy, Abraham. We like you. You seem like a nice dude. If you want Machpelah, take it. Take it. Bury your dead. You're mourning. You're grieving. What's a cave between friends? And Abraham says, no, I got to tell you, I appreciate the offer, your generosity, but I got to buy it. Okay, it has to be mine, or else it doesn't have the same meaning. I don't want there to be a controversy later on who owns this property. I have to make sure that it's mine outright, and I have to pay you. And go, okay, well, give me 10 cents on the dollar for it. No, Abraham says, I got to pay you full freight, for this cave. And they go back and forth, and Abraham does. Abraham buys the cave of Machpelah, buries Sarah there, and that's the traditional resting place for more than one of our patriarchs and matriarchs, right, is Machpelah. So this story is in a way a little bit similar, that David has to own it. It has to be his. He doesn't want there to be any controversy, any complaining. He wants to be very clear. This is now my land. Here is your 600 shekels worth of gold. You can go get a nice condo on Clearwater Beach now. It's fantastic. You can go and do, and we will have a deal. We'll have an arrangement. So he does, and they do. Let's keep going a little bit here. Sharon, give me one more here.
Okay, where are we up to? And
David there.
Okay.
Built,
And David built there an altar to the Eternal and sacrificed burnt offerings and offerings of well-being. He invoked the Eternal, who answered him with fire from heaven on the altar of burnt offerings. The Eternal ordered the angel to return his sword to its sheath.
All's well that ends well, right? And so David gets to build the altar and sacrifices, and God accepts it, mazel tov all around. And the angel takes his sword and puts that away, and returns back to wherever angels go when they're done wreaking havoc. And so that's good news for everybody on that front. Weinberg, do you want to pick up with the next part?
At that time, when David saw that the Eternal answered him at the threshing floor of Ornan, the Jebusite, then he sacrificed there for the tabernacle of the Eternal, which Moses had made in the wilderness. And the altar of burnt offerings were at that time in the shrine of Gibeon. And David was unable to go to worship God because he was terrified by the sword of the angel of the Eternal.
Thank you for that. So David's sort of relieved, because David was a little worried about schlepping to Gibeon because of all this craziness that's happening because of this sword of the angel, right? And so it was nice to have another place to worship, because even though the tabernacle wasn't there, right? The Ark of the Covenant sort of wasn't there. It was a place that God accepted worship, at that place, at the threshing floor of Ornan. And before we get to the next chapter, which we're going to get to now, before we get exactly there. So, if you have been to Israel before, And
Yeah.
if you've been to Jerusalem before, you have likely stood on the threshing floor of Ornan, because the threshing floor of Ornan is, according to tradition, the place where
The temple was built.
they build the temple, right? They build the temple on the threshing floor of Ornan. So King David purchases it. And another way of saying the threshing floor of Ornan is Mount Moriah. It all comes together, right? And so that's where God is going to choose to build the temple, is on this threshing floor of Ornan, which, again, if you went to Jerusalem, maybe not the best time to go right now, unfortunately, but if one were going to Jerusalem, you could go to the Temple Mount, or at least underneath the Temple Mount, and you can, sort of pray at the Kotel, the Western Wall, the last remnants of the Second Temple. And so you can sort of be there and sort of see it with one's own eyes. So that is the spot. Holy space, right? Very important in Judaism, as in other faiths. Terra Santa, so you have to have holy space. And holy space can be micro or macro, right? So the sanctuary of TBI, right? That is holy space, right, for us. That's sacred space for our community. If you go into another sanctuary from another synagogue, that is also, for us in a way, right, holy space. Maybe a different level, because for our sanctuary, our space is more special, for us than perhaps the sanctuary of another place. And so you can have that be a synagogue, a sanctuary is holy space, or you can be talking about Israel, right? Israel writ large is holy space, right? The land of Israel, being, the promised land, to use that vernacular, but as the sacred inheritance, right, of the Jewish people of, Jerusalem, land of Israel, etc., etc. And so it's important for there to be continuity, for things to connect together. And so this threshing floor of Ornan has to then be the same as Mount Moriah, because according to tradition, the temple is built on Mount Moriah, which then has to be then the Temple Mount later on. Who knows if it's the exact same place? I mean, we know it's impossible to tell, but that's more the tradition, right? Is that they're all the same locale, the same location. Okay, Weinbergs, give me one more.
David said, "Here will be the house of the Eternal, and here the altar of burnt offerings for Israel." David gave orders to assemble the aliens living in the land of Israel and assign them to be hewers, to quarry and dress stones for building the house of God, much iron for nails for the doors of the gates, and for clasps did David lay aside, and so much copper it could not be weighed, and cedar logs without number, for the Sidonians and the Tyranians brought many cedar logs to David.
Excellent, thank you for that. So David says, look, this is going to be the spot. I can't build the house, but a little loophole. I can't build a house, but what can I do? Get the supplies, right? I can go to Home Depot, right? And I can collect all that I need here. And so he grabs some folks also, right? He gets some of the non-Jewish community, so to speak. And he gave them a light job of, being quarrymen. And so they're building a little bit, or at least they're getting the stones. And then he's getting the iron and the copper, so much copper that it can't be weighed. Cedar logs without number, because you need the cedar logs from the Sidonians and the Tyranians and all the other Ians that might be around. He is getting all this stuff. That way,
is Hiram, right? That is
we're going to get to him, indeed. Yeah, King Hiram of Tyre is going to come in a little later, right? He's going to give them a little more stuff. Exactly right. You got that one, Bob. Good job. I like it. Okay. Carolyn, you want to pick up there?
For David thought, my son Solomon is an untried youth, and the house to be built for the Eternal is to be made exceedingly great, to win fame and glory throughout all the lands. Let me then lay aside material for him. So David laid aside much material before he died.
Lador Vador, very nice, right? So he's looking after his kids. He has his kids back here. Says, look, it's going to be hard to build the temple. It's a lot of stuff. So let me help him out. Let me procure all the goods that he needs. It's not like, again, it's almost like IKEA. You got to build it yourself, but you can get the materials, right? And that'll be fine to build whatever you need to build. So giving him the instructions, giving him the work. I've never had much success building my own furniture, I got to tell you. But I know other people can do it, and it's a good thing. Okay, so Carolyn, give me one more. Then he summoned
his son Solomon and charged him with building the house for the eternal God of Israel. David said to Solomon, my son, I wanted to build a house for the name of the eternal my God. But the word of the eternal came to me, saying, you have shed much blood and fought great battles. You shall not build a house for my name, for you have shed much blood in the earth in my sight. But you will have a son who will be a man at rest, for I will give him rest from all his enemies on all sides. Solomon will be his name, and I shall confer peace and quiet on Israel in his time. He will build a house for my name, and he shall be a son to me, and I to him a father. And I will establish his throne of kingship over Israel forever.
It's really nice, right? It's a really nice message David is conveying to Solomon, his son, and saying what God has basically said to him, giving a divine purpose to all of this. David noting his own, not his own faults, but his own reality, right? That he was swinging that sword for a long time and hacking up different people. And because he shed so much blood that he cannot, build, a spiritual site, a place of worship. But Solomon's going to be a man at rest. I almost picture a man of leisure, though that I don't think it's exactly the words that they're trying to use here. But basically saying he's going to have a peaceful experience, right? He's going to have a relatively quiet reign without as much mishigas as David had to go through during his lifetime. There's going to be peace and quiet. Solomon, shalom, it's going to be a quiet time, a peaceful time, a little play there on words.
Rabbi, how
Yes,
did David choose his son Solomon? Normally, we would think that it will be the oldest, the firstborn.
Yeah. So I think in this case, God makes the pick. I think this is God's plan right here.
Right.
Because remember, David's first son tried to kill him, and that didn't end well. David's first son was not a happy camper and tried to revolt. And so we're already at the second son, so to speak. But David has a lot of kids, and God sort of picks the one that God believes is fit to rule.
Right.
So God's going to pick Solomon to do this. Those firstborn sons, a little tricky sometimes, as we know in our tradition. Sometimes firstborn isn't always the best thing. Okay, and I say that as the firstborn son, of course. So that being said, we're going to keep going on this one. Actually, Bob, can you pick up there?
Okay.
Now, my son.
Now, my son, may the Eternal be with you, and may you succeed in building the house of the Eternal your God, as he promised you would. Only let God give you the sense and understanding and put you in charge of Israel and the observance of the teaching of the Eternal your God. Then you shall succeed. You will observantly carry out the laws and the rules that the Eternal charged to Moses to lay upon Israel. Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid or dismayed.
So Moses, David here is, charging him not only with the building, right, but also being very clear. What's Solomon's job, right? To observe and carry out the laws, and also be a teacher, right? Be a teacher of Torah, Make sure that throughout the land, people are doing the right thing, because then you're going to succeed. If you're observing the laws, if you're carrying them out, chazak ve'amatz, be strong, be of good courage. Don't be afraid, even though it's going to be a big challenge. You can do it, Solomon. I believe in you. Bob, give me one more.
Yeah. See, by denying you myself, I've laid aside for the house of the eternal 100,000 talents of gold and 1,000,000 talents of silver, and so much copper and iron that cannot be weighed. I've also laid aside wood and stone, and you shall add to them. An abundance of workmen is at your disposal, hewers, workers in the stone of wood, every kind of craftsman in every kind of material, gold, silver, copper, iron without limit. Go and do it, and may the Eternal be with you.
I feel like I'm going to end my conversation now with people, when I'm asking to do something. Go and do it, and may God be with you. Go ahead, get it done. I think that's the way to be.
Just do it.
May the force be with you. Go and do it. And here we have a little bit more, but again, it's similar stuff, right? Where it's again this charge to the officers. Make sure that you do right by my boy. Make sure you do right by Solomon. And when it's time, go and do. Come and build. Set your minds and hearts on worshiping God, and then eventually you're able to bring the Ark of the Covenant. You and Indiana Jones can bring the Ark of the Covenant to where it needs to be. And amen, amen. Now we're going to jump here. We're not going to jump because it's 8 o'clock, but that's basically the end of the book. It's just a little bit more logistics, information, and continuing sort of David's charge to Solomon, right? That he should build the temple in its due time. Assembling everyone together. And it's a little bit repetitious at this point. It's the same thing. You won't build a house in my name, David, for you are a man of blood, blah, 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 blah. And so it's just very similar wording over and over again with it. And so it gets to, I'm just going to fast forward here for a minute, that David collects all the materials, gets all the stuff, and it's almost like his farewell address. Make some sacrifices, and then we sort of get to the end of First Chronicles. Thus David, the son of Jesse, reigned over all of Israel. The length of his reign over Israel was 40 years. 40 is an auspicious number. 40 years of wandering, 40 days on the mountains, 40 days of the flood. 40 is very important. Then, of course, the 40 is not good enough. We have to break it up. 7 years in Hebron. 7, also a very important number. And 33 years in Jerusalem. 33, less important as a number, but, I'm sure we can find a midrash that says why 33 is important. He died at a ripe old age, enjoying a long life of riches and honor. And then Solomon comes later. The acts of King David, early and late, are recorded in the history of Samuel the seer, Nathan the prophet, Gad the seer, together with all the mighty deeds of his kingship and the events that befell him and Israel and all the kingdoms of the earth. Okay, and so again, as I said, this book's meant to hype up King David, that all the great things that he did. And then, of course, he dies. And then next time around, Second Chronicles. If you didn't love the first one, you still have a sequel to go. So with that said, my friends, I want to alert you that next week we'll actually not be studying Chronicles. We have a very special program next week at this same time period where we are partnering with a congregation in Brazil, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Rabbi Uri Lamb and I are tag teaming to teach a little bit. And so you were invited to be a part of that. We are sort of compiling a list of 10 questions, sort of like the 10 Commandments, with 10 questions. And he and I are going to basically do a discussion with each other. And we'll open it up to some other questions as time permits. But he and I are just going to sort of have a discussion. We're going to learn about our communities, His community in Sao Paulo is going to sign on as well. We're going to have a translator because my Portuguese falls just short of fluency, as in I don't know Portuguese at all. My Spanish can get me a little bit, but not to talk about religion. So we're going to try to have that experience in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And they're going to learn about Clearwater, Florida, and we're going to learn about Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Can
Very
I,
cool.
Great.
This is cool.
I have a Brazilian neighbor in the building. Can I invite her to tune in with me?
Definitely, that'll be fun. And so the Zoom information was in the last e-blast, and will be put out again for the program, and it should be a lot of fun. Next week is the World Union Conference, and so we thought it was fitting to do something together at this time. He and I have chatted a little bit on Zoom. We were put together by a mutual friend, and so we're just going to have a little fun with it. I think it should be fun. We'll be learning about each other's communities, and it'll be a really good discussion. We'll throw in a little theology, a little giggle or two. It'll be nice.
Yeah.
And then Chronicles the week after. Sound good?
Sounds
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 good.
great.
sounds
Very good.
Okay, so I'll catch you all sooner than later.
Yeah.
Shabbat services on Friday. Let's not forget.
We'll be there.
Our adult B'nai
All
Mitzvah.
right.
Yay, adult B'nai Mitzvah service.
Hey,
Good.
And I know Debbie's very excited. So
I'm very tired.
I don't doubt it. So that'll be very nice. You can catch that on the streaming server, the streaming page, or of course in the sanctuary as one's comfort level dictates. Okay, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Catch
you.
you all sooner
Thank
than
you,
later.
Rabbi.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.